eclipses. The thing to do during an eclipse is what you like. Be where you want to be during an eclipse, or be where you think you belong. This includes the moment and time and place of the eclipse. It also includes generally the days surrounding the eclipse, but what eclipses do is they come with discontinuity. They come with a shift in the storyline. They come with a kind of a turning point. And so that turning point can include letting go of things that you don't like, and it can include things that you bringing things in that you do like, you do want, you do intend to do. So eclipses they represent discontinuity, but they also bring in a kind of a multiplying event, what I call an imprinting or a pattern setting time. So therefore, eclipses are the time to move on from what you don't want and to move into what you do want as a conscious. Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Planet Waves TV. I'm Eric Francis Coppolino, your friendly neighborhood astrologer and investigative reporter, here with a discussion of the March 29th total solar eclipse in the sign Aries. First, though, I want to welcome you to the program, welcome you to Planet Waves. If you are new to the work I'm doing, which is really a fusion of news journalism, astrology, and planetary science. And today we'll have a little bit more planetary science than usual, since we're describing a visible, beautiful kind of event, not visible from everywhere, but visible from some places, kind of event, and that is a solar eclipse. Now, when anyone is studying astrology, there comes that point where they have the first thing that they understand. So if you haven't experienced that, well, then maybe there isn't a first thing that you understand. But what I mean by understand is to stand among. Understand sounds like it means to stand under, but actually it means to stand among, to be with the thing that you're investigating. And I would say that contrary to popular belief, that when you are able to start asking questions about something, that is a sign that you understand it. So most people think that if they ask questions about something, they're revealing that they don't understand it. And I would say that if you're asking questions, that is a definite indication that you are starting to understand it. Speaking as someone who teaches all the time, the way that I know I've got something to work with is the person I'm teaching can ask a question, and that shows that their mind is starting to parse things out and see things from different angles and to get a handle on the subject matter. All right, so eclipses are natural phenomena. They are, when they happen, they can seem very strange. Either the sun or the moon will seem to disappear. We experienced a lunar eclipse on March 14th, or we're about to experience it, depending on when you're watching this video. And a lunar eclipse happens when the Earth passes between the moon and the sun. And the Earth casts a shadow on the moon. Right. So the eclipses happen in pairs. They happen in pairs twice a year. Generally, there'll be a lunar eclipse and a solar eclipse twice a year. Sometimes there's an odd pattern of like 3 eclipses, like a week lunar, solar, week lunar, or vice versa. But that only happens every 10 or 15 years or so. And currently, we are in a cycle of the eclipses happening in pairs. Now, back to what I was saying about the first thing that I understood about astrology. The first thing that I understood enough about astrology, sufficient to make observations and ask some questions, was eclipses. That got my attention very early on. And one of the things eclipses have going for them is that they are noticeable events in the world. And by noticeable, I don't just mean that, you see the sun or the moon go out. By noticeable, I mean that there is a kind of a distinct way that people behave around the time of eclipses. And I say this whether you see them or not, whether you know they're happening or not. And it's easy to just generally make some observations, but let's cheat a little bit, and I'll give you my clues as to what eclipse time feels like. First of all, it feels like an acceleration. There's a concentration of events. So one way to think of this is that a lunar eclipse, where you start with the full moon and then you go to the new moon and you're back to the full moon, is kind of like a month of lunar activity going by in about 2 hours. Now think of how strange that would feel. The sun going away, well, you might liken that to almost like a year of activity, because the sun seems to go away in the winter, even though it really doesn't, depending if you're up way up north or south, and then it comes back. So if we go through a whole solar cycle in 6 minutes, that too has a sense of acceleration. Now, I'm not saying this is what literally happens, but what I'm saying is that it's a way to think about things, and astrology is a system of basically interwoven metaphors. I don't take the position that there's any causation associated with the astrology, though that is compelling. It can certainly seem like there's causation associated with the astrology, but I'm happy that there is only association, that there is something that the astrology is a meter of a certain kind. It is a perspective. If I'm driving down the New York State Thruway at 80 miles an hour, which you can frequently find me doing, I don't believe that the speedometer is causing the speed. The speedometer is measuring the speed. That is most of what astrology does. In fact, all of astrology, everything else is basically geophysics, astronomy of some kind. When we talk about astrology, we're talking about having a way to measure time and cycles and to read metaphors. So everything is symbolic in astrology, even though things are actually happening. The effect is translated to us through a symbolic system, and I think it's really, really important to bear that in mind. So anyway, eclipses made sense to me early on, and you can study them. And then one thing to do is you can study the kinds of events, like public events, that happen around eclipses, and the kinds of individual, personal, and private events that happen around eclipses, and you start to make observations. Now, it's important to know when you don't know. It's important to hold open space for the unknown. It's important to kind of always leave yourself open to have a little more information coming, a little more of the scene figured out, and to never fall into the trap of thinking, now I know that, now I understand that. Astrology calls for humility. You have to always be collecting observations and data and information, and then it's much more fun. All right, so while this video is still young, let's take a look at a diagram of what an eclipse is. So they say here not to scale. That's very important. If it was to scale, these things would be like a block away. But during a solar eclipse, the moon passes in between the Earth and the sun. I mean, it's really that simple. And the moon passes between the Earth and the sun every new moon. So that's once a month. But what makes a solar eclipse special is that the angles are all right, such that the shadow is cast on the Earth. Now, what's fun is the flat earthers accuse NASA, who they think invented astronomy, of never releasing a photo of an eclipse. Now, I don't know that that's true. There is no, but there's no camera big enough to like capture the Earth, the Moon, and the Sun in the camera. But there is a photograph of the August 11th, 1999 total solar eclipse from the Russian space vessel Mir, showing the shadow on the Earth. And then people would say, well, that's just those commie pinko Russians, Trump's friends, trying to fool us and thinking that that's what they saw. Anyone can make a black blotch on a fake picture of the planet. So good luck finding photos of eclipses. But the important thing to know is that that the moon is always casting a shadow, or almost always casting a shadow somewhere. It's just that during a solar eclipse, the moon casts a shadow on the Earth. When there's an ordinary new moon without a solar eclipse, the moon might cast a shadow on top of the Earth, or so-called beneath the Earth. But the thing that makes the solar eclipse special is that the shadow lands on the Earth. And it always goes in kind of a weird squiggle. I lost track of where this eclipse is visible. It's from a bunch of strange places, but you can look up, real strange places. But you can look it up by just Googling March 29th eclipse, path of totality. Now, it is a total eclipse, which means that there is a clear shadow cast, and then everybody else sees the penumbra. That's called the umbra. The penumbra, and that is they see a partial eclipse. So without getting into all the technology of eclipses, and there's easy videos to watch, and yes, they're based on everything being a sphere and the sun being 93 million miles away and all that, and all the rotating orbiting bodies are doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing. And when you crunch all the math and you say it will get dark in New Jersey at 3:14 p.m., and then somehow mysteriously it does, that's not because they were guessing. That's because all the physics worked out exactly perfectly. So don't let anybody say, oh, well, nobody, these astronomers don't know what they're talking about. The relevance and the accuracy of a model involves verifying this involves using the model to make predictions. And by predictions, I don't mean to say that, the vice president is going to catch cold on March 29th. I mean, by a prediction, I mean knowing exactly when the sun is going to go out over Ridgewood, New Jersey. And then it will come back at a certain time. And by the way, we all of us Americans, or very nearly all of us Americans, saw this happen with the all-American eclipse, which was April 8th, 2024. And I went up to Rochester and hung out with like 1,000 Mennonites, flirting with the Mennonite girls. It was a tremendous amount of fun. And this was a total solar eclipse where the shadow was cast across the United States. That also happened in 2017. It's fairly rare. In fact, it's fairly rare that the shadow will be cast in any one place, but you can see that there are kind of like composite eclipse maps that go back, like 4,000 years, and you can see that eventually every place, almost every place, is caught by the eclipse. But it's fairly rare for any one place. So this eclipse happened to cut from basically Mexico through Texas, up across Nova Scotia. The one in 2017 seemed to run from Oregon down to the Carolinas. But people fly great distances to see solar eclipses, and not so much lunar eclipses, but there are eclipse chasers that will, and they're not all photographers. They're not all astrophotographers. But I know at least one of those astrophotographers who, when he can, will always go to the scene of an eclipse, and it's great fun. I think for them. I don't think that photographs for eclipses are that exciting. Frankly, I'm more interested in what's going on around it, but that's just my taste in photography. I'd rather photograph the environment. Okay, so this new eclipse is going to happen on March 29th at 5:57 a.m. So one way that you know that it's not going to really be visible, for example, in Kingston, New York, where this chart is set for, is that it's happening at sunrise. Normally, for an eclipse to be visible, it helps if it is somewhat overhead. It may be, if you've got a very clear view of the horizon, it may be interesting, but if the moon actually doesn't line up with the sun, you're not really going to see anything, and so that involves not only the moon and the sun, it involves your point of view on Earth. If you're anywhere outside of the path of totality, you're not going to see a total eclipse. And if you're outside the path of the partial eclipse, you're not going to see anything at all. And that's most of the planet. So let's go back to this chart. And the reason I've called this video the total solar eclipse conjunct everything is because it takes place right in the middle of this grand conjunction or locomotive pattern that is spreading all the way from about 12 and change Pisces all the way about to 24 and change of Aries, and so it covers almost 45 degrees of the zodiac. That's a lot of planets concentrated in a very small place, as you can see. Okay, so one of the ways we know that an eclipse is happening is that, for example, I have a program where I can just go right to every new moon, boom, 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 real quick. But we know that there's an eclipse happening when the moon and sun are conjunct anywhere near the lunar node. Now, I have a better view of this. So in this view, this is for Mercury stationing retrograde on the 14th. We can see that the sun is near the north node. That's it. That's all you need to know that eclipses are happening. The sun is only near the north node for about a week every 6 months. It's near the south node for about a week every 6 months. And it's only when the sun is near the north node or the south node that you can have any form of an eclipse. So now looking back at this paper, we can see that the sun at 9 degrees, 9 even, and we've got the node at 27.5 degrees. That is close enough to have a total eclipse because you can see that it's happening. So the proximity to the node is not the only indication of the strength of the eclipse. Sometimes, as in this case, it can be 12 or 13 degrees off the node, and you still get the eclipse. All right. But let's say you didn't have a program that cast it. How would you know an eclipse is coming? Well, you would look in a book that I have unfortunately left on the scanner. But imagine a very, very thick book. In fact, I'm going to pause this and I'm going to get it. Okay, this is the book. This is the ephemeris. You're an astrologer first if you have one of these, and then you're figuring out how to use it. That pretty much is what separates the Girl Scouts from the Brownies. If you're interested in what's going on in this book and it looks like this, then you're an astrologer. I suspect that a great many astrologers are not. People who call themselves astrologers in 2025 today are not able to use the ephemeris, nor do they think they need one. But that's all right, because they're just not gonna know how to use this very important tool. But it remains, despite the age of computers, the ephemeris remains a very important tool. And the way that you know an eclipse is happening is all ephemerides that I have ever seen tell you right up on top. The other months don't have this, that there's a total eclipse of the moon. Oh, this is a partial eclipse. Ha ha. I thought it was a total eclipse. I'm sorry. I didn't know when I didn't know. So that's why it helps to look things up in the ephemeris. But let's just see what the other source says. I've got another source lined up here. So Orias reports a total eclipse of the moon at 23 Virgo 57 on 14 March. and a partial eclipse of the sun at 9 even of Aries on 29 March at the following time, standard universal time coordinated. And sure enough, I got this wrong several times, so I stand corrected on all of that. With astrology, there is a lot to know. This is on the Serennu.com website, Serennu, again, Serennu, Serennu.com. And this is the Eclipse Finder on Serennu.com. You have to be a paying member to get it, but it's not very expensive, and it's worth every penny and 10 times more to have access to this tool. Again, Serennu.com. And what they tell us is, we confirm that there's a total lunar eclipse, or was, on 14 March. That's the time, and they give you the position. The position is very important. And a partial eclipse of the sun on 29 March at this time in this degree. What Tracy says is that the approximate position is 8:59:40. That rounds out to 9:00, and we then find the 9:00 in this chart, which says that obviously is rounding up from arc seconds, because Tracy, unlike other ephemerides, lists the time in seconds and the arc seconds, the fractions of a minute. So when we round up, 59 becomes 60, 60 becomes 9. That's why this commercial program says 9:00. It is a very, very slight rounding upward to 9 degrees. Okay, so there you go. We've got this information. We know when it's happening. We've sorted out that it's a partial eclipse. We verified against now 3 different sources. So we have the time. Some of these sources are calculated using the United States Naval Observatory. Some are calculated using the Swiss Ephemeris. And I'm sure that Orias is a big enough organization that its programmers acquire. This is a French, published in Paris in the 5th arrondissement, right around the corner from where I used to live. They have their own programmers who know how to do that, and there are probably 2 or 3 sources of the ephemeris equations. All of these things are calculated by equation. The equations are all based on a spherical sun orbiting a spherical Earth, with the spherical moon orbiting the spherical Earth, the sun being 93 million miles away. And when you verify that whole calculation procedure, everything happens at exactly the right time. That's it. There's no guesswork involved. It is all basically calculus. And when all those numbers work out, then you look up in the sky and you say, wow, there's a lunar eclipse. How do they know that? I read it in the newspaper. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what eclipses do. Now, this is not this is just here. Here we go. This is the chart for the eclipse. Now, as I've mentioned in other videos, this eclipse is happening amidst much other fanfare. For example, Venus and Mercury retrograde, dancing back and forth between Pisces and Aries, and then Saturn and Neptune. Well, Neptune enters Aries. Saturn soon after enters Aries. So we've got a lot going on around the time of this eclipse. And we can see that it's only 9 days after the equinox. So the equinox was on the 20th, and then the 29th, we've got the eclipse happening. And so there's a lot of fanfare surrounding the eclipse. And as I mentioned in the Mercury retrograde video, one of the ways you figure out what's going on and how kind of interesting and intense Mercury retrograde is going to be is what is in the surrounding environment. And it's similar with an eclipse of the sun. So let's just sum up what eclipses seem to be about based on my long observation. One of them is there is this acceleration and concentration of experience. So that means that things will seem to move more quickly, as if I don't have my illustration of the Venturi effect, but essentially there used to be this thing called a carburetor, and the Venturi effect was when they would inject a liquid in at this end of the carburetor, and it would come out as a gas at that end of the carburetor, because it throws off heat in the Venturi, and it is being put under, well, not exactly pressure, but acceleration. It's almost like negative pressure, and that turns the liquid into a gas, and then it can burn. Now we have fuel injectors. There are no more Venturis. But if you're really curious, either bang a comment in, and I'll tell you where to find it, or just look up Venturi, Venturi, effect, eclipse, and my name. I'm the only person using this metaphor. So eclipses are kind of a Venturi effect, where there's a change of form, and this is associated with an acceleration. So you can think of the acceleration as being a liquid shot through a tube too narrow for it, and accelerates and turns into a gas. So it's an acceleration and a change of state. Now, also eclipses, they occur on several planes. They occur in time and multiple dimensions of space. So that to me says that they are symbolically and really multi-dimensional experiences. Multi-dimensional experience. We have those all the time at the Omega Institute. And so by multi-dimensional experience, I mean times when there are intersecting influences. So we get the sense of concentration and acceleration, and then we get the intersecting influences. Another thing that eclipses seem to have in common is that they come with a sense of events being fated. Oh my God, this was fated, or it just seems like that. Partly it's that eclipses are ominous, meaning that they are associated with omens, and then therefore they are taken as being omens. So an omen is the sense that the thing was fated to happen. One example is that the night that the royal divorce of Diana, Princess of Wales, and Prince Charles, it's very, very rare for royals to get divorced, especially the heir apparent to the throne, and then the heir apparent to the Queen Regency. And so when it was announced at Parliament that Diana was going to be kind of leaving the royal family, there was a total lunar eclipse that night visible over Westminster. No one could miss the symbolism. The moon went out. The moon's other name is Diana, and Diana is Diana, Princess of Wales. That's kind of ominous. These are two examples involving lunar eclipses. Another example involving a lunar eclipse was the week that Diana, Princess of Wales, died in a car accident in Paris. And I believe this was in the summer of 1996 or 97. Mother Teresa also died, and over the Houses of Parliament, Westminster, there was a reporter on. Well, this was visible from all over the world. But there was a crescent moon conjunct Venus in Scorpio, the sign of death. Two women, Venus and the moon, in the sign Scorpio, shone over the Houses of Parliament. So Diana was particularly sensitive to astrological symbolism, but particularly eclipses. But these are kind of ominous things. And when the sun goes out, it's kind of ominous. So it's not really going to go out too much any place, because this is a partial eclipse, meaning that everything is not quite lined up right for there to be a clear path of totality. Anything else? Okay, what else? Acceleration, fate, concentration of events. One last thing with eclipses. The thing to do during an eclipse is what you like. Be where you want to be during an eclipse, or be where you think you belong. This includes the moment and time and place of the eclipse. It also includes generally the days surrounding the eclipse, but what eclipses do is they come with discontinuity. They come with a shift in the storyline. They come with a kind of a turning point. And so that turning point can include letting go of things that you don't like, and it can include things that you bringing things in that you do like, you do want, you do intend to do. So eclipses they represent discontinuity, but they also bring in a kind of a multiplying event, what I call an imprinting or a pattern setting time. So therefore, eclipses are the time to move on from what you don't want and to move into what you do want as a conscious, intentional act, as a demonstration of your ability to do the one thing, the one freedom that you have on this planet is the ability to make decisions. And so when eclipses come, generally that says the time has arrived to make decisions. Things may feel faded, but they're not really faded. It's just time to choose. And that's what I have to say. The 2025 spring reading for the faithful covers this eclipse and many other events. All of these Mercury and Venus retrogrades, Saturn and Neptune changing signs, the eclipses, the conjunction of Chiron and Eris all going on. All of that is covered in Reckoning for the faithful, your 2025 spring reading. You can have a reading from me for an affordable price. I also do private consulting, astrological and otherwise. I'm very good at midlife and late life career changes. I work with a lot of artists, various different painters and sculptors and rock stars and tuba players and things like that. And so I specialize in doing career development work, particularly for actual grown-ups. Of course, if you're young and you're interested in career development work, I would be happy to do that and hold the door open for the expression of your deepest passions and your most likely talents. All right, signing off from Kingston, New York, I'm Eric Francis Coppolino for Planet Waves. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.